This year, across Scotland, young people are taking part in the Programme for International Student Assessment, or PISA, as it's more commonly known as. And this year, the primary focus is on science. It's actually the biggest research study in education in the world. And I've come to this school to find out a little bit more about what it is and why it's important. Keith, great to meet you. Tell me a little bit about your role with PISA. What do you do? What's your job there?
So I'm a principal research officer in learning analysis at the Scottish Government.
So the boss.
Well, not quite the boss.
Almost the boss.
Yeah, it's my job to evaluate and government policies and undertake research into how the education system in Scotland is working. And as part of that is managing PISA in Scotland, so managing the contract. So I oversee a company called the National Foundation for Educational Research, and they undertake the PISA assessments for us. I also sit on the PISA governing board, so that's 80 countries around the world who, I suppose, set the future direction for PISA.
So it's 80 countries. So, and who runs the entire thing? I mean, is there an overarching kind of body that is kind of in charge of PISA?
Well, the international body, the OECD, are in charge of PISA. It's kind of their baby, if you like, and they've been running it since the year 2000. So they run it from international perspective, and then but it's the countries themselves that set the future direction.
Okay.
So the 80 plus countries will sit around the table every 6 months.
That's a big table.
It is a big table.
80, I'm just imagining there's 80 countries all sitting around. It kind of has that sort of United Nations kind of, if I think about it like that. Is it?
Very much so. You have your countries in front of you, your country names, and if you want to speak, you put your country names on the side.
Small flag.
Not quite the flags, but everybody's named by their country, and then we have get-togethers every 6 months to decide future direction, thinking ahead to future assessments and what's going to be assessed and how. So it's very much driven by the countries that take part.
Is there kind of broad agreement? I'm imagining 80 countries all sitting together, and knowing politics as I do, I can imagine great arguments and discussions, and I mean, or is there a general consensus about this is the direction that we want to go?
I think there's a fundamental ethos for PISA in terms of its international task, in terms of assessing, young people at the points at which they're about to go into the wide world, choose their subjects, go into university, and to understand what skills and knowledge they have to be able to take forward into their adult lives. Yeah. So I think that's a fundamental thing that everybody agrees on. Yeah. And I suppose what we debate is how to do that. And I think you have international experts from across the world that put a lot of effort into and thinking into how we do that. And the great thing about PISA is it's adaptable. So you have the core sort of maths, reading and science behind it, but you have the innovative domain. So it looks at things like AI and cooperation and things like that. So it's adapting to the future world.
Well, gosh, and the world is changing incredibly fast. And are you kind of over that? Do you think, my goodness, things like AI, for example, how are we going to factor in AI into the decisions we make?
One of the real benefits of PISA is that it is adaptable. It's always looking to the future. At the moment, we're thinking about PISA 2029, how we're going to look at how AI, how students interact with AI, how it helps them to learn, how they can pick, facts from fictions or falsehoods, and to make it work for them.
I suppose my main question is, why is PISA important? Like, what is it about PISA that you think is of real value, particularly here in Scotland?
I think PISA is so important because of I suppose it's been going on a long time. We've got, from this year, we'll have 25 years worth of data for students every 3 years, not just for Scotland, but for countries around the world. So we can look at how things are changing over time in Scotland, but then also we can compare ourselves with 80 plus countries around the world to see what we can learn from other countries and what we can learn from our own curriculum as well. And that kind of forward looking as well, we can start to think, well, the policy changes we're putting in now, we can think, how's that going to affect PISA results in the future, and start to plan to see what what the impact is on the education system.
And have you, in the over 20 years now, have you seen real results? Have you seen the kind of effect that PISA has on I suppose on building curriculums, for example, but also particularly for young people?
I think PISA's been really interesting, particularly in recent years. We obviously had the pandemic not that long ago now.
I remember it.
Yes.
I remember it. There seemed to be a sort of universal dip in PISA scores from the pandemic for obvious reasons.
Well, the OECD called this the COVID edition of PISA because they really saw the impact around the world. Most countries saw a dip in attainment, a dip in their PISA scores, particularly for reading and maths. Maths was the one that had the biggest dip, and most countries experienced that. All the countries in the UK and Scotland and most countries in the EU. So it's really interesting to see what that impact has been, and there was part of the questionnaire was asking students what their experience was of learning at home, the school building closures. So I think the next PISA, which is happening in September, will be particularly interesting because we'll start to look at education recovery, whether maths in particular as recovers, whether science, which was statistically about the same in 2022, whether that's going to improve in this edition. So I think it's really interesting to see what the impact of the pandemic was, but then what education recovery looks like going forward.
So I'm a student and I've been randomly selected to do this PISA assessment. I'm just trying to understand what the questions are like. Is it a bit like doing a National 5 exam?
Yeah, very much questions around real life situations. So it's not based on the science or maths questions you would normally do in everyday classwork. It's based on like real life situations. It's based on things like sustainability questions, climate change questions, questions that are really interesting to engage in. And it's going to test your sort of skills and knowledge in applying those to these everyday real life situations.
So, so reading, maths, science. This year, where's the focus?
So the focus this year is on science, and this is the first time since 2015 that the main focus of the assessment's on science. So pupils will get questions on maths and reading as well, but very much the focus will be on science and working into that, things like sustainability and scientific literacy, climate change are being brought into that for the first time. So I think it's a really interesting assessment to take for science, but there'll also be questions in the student questionnaire around people's views and experiences of learning science in school, and I think that's where a lot of the value comes from, is getting people's experiences of science and their views on themselves as their scientific literacy and their interests as well.
Exciting in PISA this year.
For each PISA cycle, they have something called an innovative domain. So that this is testing or assessing something that's an emerging educational or policy issue. This time it's called Learning in a Digital World. It's quite an innovative and engaging part of the assessment. It's looking at how students learn using digital tools, how they work collaboratively, how they select the right information. But it's something that young people will enjoy engaging with and give us really interesting information about how students navigate the digital world.
It's so specifically aimed at 15-year-olds, and I'm curious as to why. Like, what's the reasoning behind that?
The thought process is that 15 is the oldest mandatory age internationally,
right.
And before students start to specialise in terms of the education or going into the workplace, going into further or higher education. So it's really focusing on what they've learned through their school education.
A particularly important window, I suppose, in terms of getting an idea of educational standards.
Yes, it absolutely is an important window. Pupils will go lots of different directions there, so it's a good way to, I suppose, equalise across countries what we're trying to test.
Like, does everyone get the same set of questions? How does that work?
So PISA is set up to be adaptive. So depending on the answers that the students give to the first few questions, they go down different routes.
Ah, okay. Like
So
sort of choose your own adventure.
a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's interesting in that way. It's the first time the science assessment's been set up in that way. They've done it for the reading and maths in the last two assessments, and it's worked really well. And the best part about it is that it's not set too high or too low for students. It's something that's suitable for them, so it makes sure that they have a good experience in the assessment.
When you say have a good experience,
Yeah,
is it?
that
No,
wasn't
no. I'm interested. Is
Yeah.
it? I actually really enjoyed doing the questions. I went online yesterday and I did the questions, and I really enjoyed doing it. And I thought, well, is that just me because I'm old, or is it designed to be an enjoyable experience as well?
PISA is designed to be, quite engaging.
Yeah.
It's online. It involves interacting with it rather than just typing in an answer.
Yeah.
You're dragging things across. You're manipulating numbers and diagrams. So it looks interesting and engaging. It's something students often find more enjoyable than the assessments that they would normally do. So it's a low stakes, what we call a low stakes assessment. It's not something where you have to worry about what the results are.
Yeah.
It's something that you have a go, enjoy it, do your best.
It's really important, obviously, for 15-year-olds. Honestly, I kind of think everyone should have a go at it. Just because it is a really interesting exercise, because it makes you think, oh, how do I think about these particular questions?
Yeah, we
Anyway.
certainly would encourage everybody to have a go at the PISA assessments.
Teachers should definitely have a go at it.
Yeah, I think we often, as the public, we often think that what our 15-year-olds or at school,
Yeah.
the questions that they answer are not necessarily that hard, but I think we'd be really interested in, these are the types of questions that our students are answering and answering well, and the type of information and knowledge that they have. So certainly, I think everybody would be enjoy and find it interesting.
So we've got PISA. Are there any other international assessment bodies that are going to be used?
Well, Scotland has re-entered two international studies. So these are the Progress in Reading and Literacy study, or PEARLS, and the Trends in International Maths and Science study as well. And the PEARLS assessment is going to be in primary schools next year. That's testing reading and literacy in P6, and then TIMS the year after, and that's going to be in P6 and S2. So we're going to have a sort of wealth of international comparable data to really understand and influence the Scottish education system.
That's the key thing, isn't it? Suddenly you've got lots of data, and with that data you can get a better understanding of what's going on, what the state of play is, how we compare to other countries, and then we can make better informed decisions.
I think it's really crucial that we have different stages. So PISA's very much 15-year-olds, but that's kind of the end of the educational and school experience. So you're measuring what they have learned. With TIMS and PEARLS, the advantage is we're getting into primary schools, so we're starting to learn, I suppose, what the experience has been at primary school, and that helps us to have interventions and policies that then will influence the whole school journey, and to be able to understand how that compares to other countries. I think it's really valuable.
I had a go doing the PISA questions yesterday, and I was really impressed by them. And I'm just interested in, this is an organisation that you work for. Why is it important? Why do you think this is of value?
The PISA assessment's of real value because of the data it provides. So it's a really rich data set, not just on attainment, how well students do in reading, maths and science, but also their experiences, their attitudes, how they think of themselves. And I think that the real value is matching those two. So we can understand how parental support, peer support, teacher support really impacts on pupils' lives, not just their attainment, but their health and well-being as well. There's almost too much data for us to use, so we're really encouraging other academics to use the data and to have a real, I suppose, culture around utilising the data for improvements.
There's never too much data.
Yeah, almost too much.
Almost too much data.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Keith, for chatting. Don't go away because we're going to come back to you. We're going to take a little short break and we're going to find out a little bit more about what happens with that data and what the PISA findings are. They've spent 2 hours doing the assessment, but that's not all. There's another bit to it. There's this, what do we call it, a questionnaire or a survey, and I'm just like to know kind of what that is, and then maybe you could tell us what we learned from it.
So the questionnaire takes about 40 minutes. It asks students.
I hope they get a break in between. Do they get a coffee break?
Yes,
Okay.
they do get.
Good.
They do get breaks in between.
Okay.
And this is a really critical thing for them to answer.
Yeah.
So for the test to count, they have to take part in the questionnaire, and it's a real opportunity for students to tell us about their home life, their school life.
And it's all anonymous. I should remind people that it's,
absolutely. No, completely anonymous. Your name's not attached to anything at all, and we don't get any data on which schools. It's all at a national level.
Okay.
But it's a real chance for students to say what life is like in the classroom. You know, are the teachers inspiring? Are they supportive? And all our data says that they are. And it's about their attitudes towards things like creativity and science, and what they think about maths and themselves doing maths, and what they want to do for the future. So there's so much detail in there, and we can link that back to how well they do in the assessment to really understand, you know, what characteristics and experiences really support, you know, well-being and attainment as well.
See, to my mind, that's as important, if not more important, than the main assessment. I mean, actually finding out the context of all this, like what school's like, and things like support, teacher support, and parental support, and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
That's all vital, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just as important as the test, and they kind of work hand in hand, because you can link, you know, how well the pupil's doing, what they know, their knowledge, their skills, with their attitudes. Yeah. You know, so do they do better in science because they're positive about their learning, about their teachers, about their future in terms of learning, or being in a science subject?
Yeah. I mean, presumably it's no good to be brilliant at science, but then actually hate science.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, do you get things like that? I mean, do you get kind of interesting patterns that you can start to see about people's attitudes towards it in comparison to how well they do in a subject?
Yeah, we can certainly look at those links. Yeah. And we find the more positive a student is about, you know, subject, the better they tend to do, and that applies for students that have, you know, roughly the same backgrounds, but they have a more positive view and they tend to do better.
One thing I saw was how good Scotland is at teacher support, how good the teaching system is.
That's something that consistently comes through sort of year on year, that pupils are positive about their teachers in terms of, you know, providing support when needed, being enthusiastic, being knowledgeable, and the more pupils, you know, feel that way, the better they tend to do in PISA as well, and the more positive they are about schools. So certainly there's a strong link and a really positive response from pupils about their teachers.
So why is the survey such an important thing, do you think?
For students, it's really important to have a chance to have their voice heard. So their experiences, their attitudes, how they feel about, you know, life in the classroom, and that, you know, goes up to Scottish Government, to, you know, to the OECD, and it helps us to learn about how we can improve the education system. So it's a real opportunity to feed into that. At the school level, the head teacher will undertake a survey as well.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And you can compare that with, you know, pupils' responses. So it's been really interesting to compare those two, to link those two, to understand, you know, what the head teacher feels is happening in the schools and how that's supporting pupils.
What do head teachers think at the moment? I'm curious now what the kind of mood is of head teachers. Are they? Is it a positive response?
Generally positive. They're positive about, you know, the workforce. They're positive about the, you know, materials that they have, and actually the head teachers that are in more deprived areas are more positive about their school and about the resources they have, which is positive, and it isn't the same across all countries. And other things we can take them that are there are a few issues that came up in the last PISA. So things like mobile phones. You know, head teachers thought that was more of an issue than before, and actually pupils felt it was more of a distraction. So, you know, there's kind of chiming between the two surveys that mobile phones was something we needed to look at. Equally on digital, we could look at the digital provision in schools and look at what the pupil experience of that was as well. And actually both were positive, but that gives us really good intelligence in terms of what digital or mobile phones look like in schools.
Could you use that data to then make decisions about mobile phone use at school? Could you say, right, we want to have a blanket ban of mobile phones in the classroom, and here's the data we've got that kind of backs that up?
But that kind of data has already been used in mobile phone guidance. So there's new Scottish Government guidance last year on mobile phone use to try empower schools to take the right choice for their school. And PISA data help back that up in terms of the types of sort of guidance that's provided to school and actions that they could take. So there's a sort of direct link between the two.
So do individual schools get their results back from the survey so they can actually do work on a individual level, as it were?
Yeah, so when the data is published internationally, we'll provide data back to the schools in terms of what their pupils said, completely anonymously, so they can't tell what students said what, but you can see in your school, these are the types of issues that pupils raised, whether it's home life or whether it's to around the school with friends, whether it's to in the classroom, whether being put up by mobile phones, for example, and it gives schools a good opportunity to really understand, I suppose, how pupils are feeling about school and to adjust their policies and practices. So I think it's the questionnaire is powerful both at the school level and national and international as well.
I want to just quickly talk about the real positives that you've learned about Scottish education. Things like you mentioned reading, for example, really, really good. Young people understanding the value of science and particularly how science can help them in future careers, and also the support that teachers give as well. It seems like a real broad mix of positives that we know about.
Yes, there are a range of positives, both from the questionnaire and the assessment. In 2015, the last time science was the main domain, we had really positive views in terms of personal views on scientific literacy, but then science for the future as well, and science in the classroom. Compared to other countries, and with science being the main domain this time, it'd be really interesting to see how that's progressed in the last 10 years.
Well, I hope so, but also in terms of science in Scotland, I mean, Scotland really is kind of punching above its weight in science and in high tech, particularly the space industry. I know that there is so much opportunity there. It would be really good to see young people, well, and teachers as well, really understanding that and knowing that it's out there.
Yeah, Scotland has a long history in the sciences across a range of topics, and we look to really understand how young people are feeling about science now, about their identity in terms of science, their sort of knowledge and confidence in it. So I think that this will be really crucial to understanding that.
Yeah. Does that survey tell us about things like student well-being, like how happy students are at school, how comfortable they feel, which is obviously going to have effects on how well they do?
Yeah, there's a huge range of measures and questions around sort of well-being and happiness in school. One of the key ones is a sense of belonging in school. So do you feel the school's for you? Do you feel that you belong there? And actually Scotland comes up pretty well in that. There's other measures around life satisfaction, bullying, around discipline in the classrooms that really help us understand, how their sort of peer relationships as well. Ask about their friendship groups. So there's a real wealth of data around health and well-being that helps to shape our policies as well.
Yeah. Keith, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy PISA schedule to talk to me about all this. It's been absolutely fascinating. If people want to find out more, not just about PISA itself, but actually the data, look at the data and see what we're learning, where can they go?
I think the first step would be to look on the Scottish Government website. There's a Scotland's highlights on PISA reports for each assessment, and that will give you an overview of Scotland's results. But if you want to do a deeper dive into the data, there's the OECD website, and they have a number of different publications that look into the international comparisons.
So for data nerds, that's where they go.
And for the absolute data nerds, there's open source data, so you can go on the OECD website and download all the data that's ever been produced on PISA.
This is what I'm going to do tonight.
Yes. It's probably too big for your computer.
Okay.
So I'd be selective. Yeah.
Okay.
But certainly, it's completely open source. It's for researchers to use.
Yeah.
For academics, educators to have a look, and we're open to questions around what we're seeing in Scotland.
Do you think decision makers in Scotland know how valuable this data set is?
I think in Scotland, I think the last set of results where we saw the impact of COVID really instigated lots of action. For example, the curriculum improvement cycle, focused on maths first off, and I think that was in recognition that learning maths and teaching maths was quite difficult during the pandemic. So I think PISA influenced that, and I think across a range of things, in behaviour, mobile phone guidance, we've seen PISA data being really used. So I think there's a real value being placed on PISA data and making sure that it's used in the best way possible.
That's good to hear. Thank you so much. I'm going to continue my little PISA odyssey. We've got a couple more people to talk to. Ian, great to see you. Thank you very much for chatting. You've got the best job title. Maybe you could tell us what it is. Sounds very important and official.
So I'm the Senior Education Officer in Education Scotland, and I've lead on a number of things. I've lead on the sciences curriculum, I've lead on STEM learning, and I also lead on learning for sustainability.
Key word in there is lead.
Lead. I don't do all the work, but a big part of our role in Education Scotland is to look at data, look at research from across the world, and use that data and that knowledge to try and support schools in Scotland, to support practitioners, to support local authorities. So PISA data would be having that data.
I'm surprised I didn't know more about PISA, and I've come here today to sort of learn about it. I've learned so much, and I realised just how extraordinarily valuable this data is. I'm just interested in, from where you are, how you would use this data in your day job. Like, what do you then do with it?
So the data is used in a number of ways. Obviously, Education Scotland is a Scottish Government agency, so we're working really closely with our policy colleagues in the core Scottish Government. And so PISA data and other data like it would be used to inform ministers, to inform big decisions about policy, for instance. For instance, over the last seven or so years, we've had a STEM strategy in Scotland, and so PISA data is really important to inform that. And also, for instance, to give you some practical examples from PISA data, we can see that we've got maybe an issue around confidence, particularly around self-efficacy, compared to learners in other countries. So one of the things we did through the STEM Grants programme that Education Scotland ran is we funded programmes across Scotland to support and promote growth mindset, particularly within mathematics and science.
How do you do that? I'm fascinated how you might do that. So you get this data, you understand, you say, oh, here's a problem. We can now sort of tweak the curriculum or introduce new initiatives. And I'm sort of curious, particularly something like growth mindset, which I think is so important. What kind of things do you do?
So the STEM Grants programme was just really a competitive process. We said quite clearly to people across Scotland, to schools, to teachers, to local authorities, but also to other third sector partners, science centres, universities, colleges, for instance. And we said, here are the priorities for Scottish education. We've got a STEM strategy. We know we need to support and enhance professional learning for practitioners across Scotland. Here are the big priority areas. And we invited schools, authorities and partners to bid for that money. But when we were taking decisions about who would get the funding, it was based on quite detailed data from PISA, from our own data sets we gathered, to identify where that money can be best impact.
I'm just interested in where and in the kind of actual things that would change mindset. Like, what kind of is it sort of tweaks to the curriculum, or is it extra things that you bring into schools, workshops? I'm sort of interested in what they are.
Yeah, the STEM Grants programme particularly was around professional learning. So what we were focusing on was that professional learning for teachers, to give them the resources they need, to equip them with the strategies, the knowledge, the research, to give them an evidence-based practice and what was going to make a difference. And the teachers would then, the practitioners would then take that into the classrooms with the learners that we work with. So the STEM Grants programme in particular was very much around professional learning for practitioners. So that's one of the things that we do within Education Scotland.
I do think there is that thing, particularly with science, that people think of it as something other, that only other people do. And if you're talking about science, that somehow you're not invited. And that mindset has to change. If you want people to feel confident about science, they need to feel invited, if you know what I mean, invited to the party.
Absolutely. Well, one of our sort of mantras, for instance, within our team in Education Scotland is science and STEM is for everyone. We want it to be really inclusive.
20 years I've been saying the same thing. Exactly that. Yeah.
So that's a part of the work we're doing in Education Scotland. I think it's important to point out, for instance, the work that we do. People, when they think of science, maybe think of secondary schools, but it's a 3 to 18 curriculum.
Yeah.
So a lot of the work that we're doing is maybe with early learning childcare settings, which quite often might not have the same level of competence or background in science. Similarly, at primary school level, additional support needs settings, secondary schools, but also in community learning development settings, because we need to be engaging with our communities and our families and our parents and our carers as well. So the work that we're doing and the data we use helps to inform all of that, and we're trying to address those, target the support and the resources. It's going to be big stuff.
So I'd say PISA is a big part of that. It sounds like it.
It absolutely is, and I'll give you another example in terms of gender balance and equalities. It was a really significant focus of our STEM strategy. We had a team of gender balance and equalities officers. Again, a lot of the PISA data was really interesting in terms of gender, in terms of self-efficacy, confidence levels, what the data was showing us. So the gender balance team would very much be using that data as part of their professional learning, resourcing programs to try and raise awareness and put strategies in place around that as well.
In terms of the international flavour of PISA, do you find yourself looking at what other countries do and sort of borrowing or taking ideas from here, there and everywhere? Does the PISA data give you that opportunity?
Absolutely. So that's one of the real strengths of the PISA data. So just now we're in a really exciting period in Scottish education. We're going through a curriculum improvement cycle. So subjects like sciences, mathematics, health and wellbeing, and English, they're some of the first subjects to go through this process of change. So we're really interested about the PISA data. Part of what we want to do is look at other countries around the world to see different approaches, different ways of doing things, who's got effective practice that we can learn from as we make these changes, and what we can do better. We don't claim to have all the answers. And similarly, we know circumstances where other countries are looking at Scotland.
Well, I was going to ask, what do you think that Scotland has to offer? Do you have things that you're particularly proud of or you think are particularly good that Scotland does that other countries can learn from?
So it's an interesting one because I said my remit is for science, STEM and learning for sustainability. So actually in 2018, the innovative domain for PISA was looking at global competence, which is very similar to our concept in Scotland of learning for sustainability. And actually the top headline from that study showed that actually Scottish learners were some of the top performing in the world in relation to global competence.
Wow.
There's only 2 other countries that scored higher than Scotland. So that's something that people in Scotland, and young people in Scotland, should be really proud of. And I think one of the things we're really excited by PISA 2025, with focus on science, there's also going to be a really strong focus on the environment, which is something that's a strong feature of our curriculum. And also, following the United Nations climate conference, COP29, that took place last year, there's plans afoot to make sure that climate change, climate literacy, and how young people understand climate change is going to be an embedded feature of the PISA surveys going forward. So countries around the world can track young people in terms of their views and perceptions of climate change, and that's going to be really, really important.
But also science, in terms of careers as well, there's so much exciting stuff going on in Scotland in terms of science, particularly in the space industry where I focus quite a lot of attention. There's so much going on. So all of this, particularly that confidence where young people can go, actually, there is a place for me working in science in Scotland, in the space industry, which is exciting. This has got to be good stuff.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time for Scotland. You mentioned the space industry. I think the statistics are it's going to grow 5-fold in the next 5 years or so. Similarly, there's a massive investment in getting jobs in Scotland. So within a space of 2 to 3 years, I think there's going to be something like £90 billion invested in the shift to the green economy. We've got the construction industry, photonics, advanced manufacturing. So it's a really, really exciting time. And we really need to young people to be excited and inspired by those opportunities. And we need to make sure that we're getting that support right at school level. And I think one of the really positive things I've taken from the PISA data was in 2015, which was the last time that PISA focused on science. It showed really clearly that young people recognise and they appreciate the importance of science to their lives and their future career prospects. Since that time, we've invested a lot, for instance, in developing a young workforce programme, looking at pathways and careers and apprenticeship opportunities for a STEM strategy as well. So, one of the real benefits of PISA is we can look at this data in a sort of longitudinal way. And, every 5 or 10 years and say, actually, from these big investments, we also invested a lot of money, for instance, through the RAISE programme, the Raising Aspirations in Science Education programme, which focused on primary science. So particularly when we get to PISA, but also the TIMS survey, which surveys primary school learners. I think we'll be really interested to see if that investment and all of that work really starts to pay dividends. So from all of these different angles, PISA data is really useful.
Do we need to make PISA more visible? Do more people need to know about it? Because it seems to me that not enough people may have heard of it, or they're a little bit kind of fuzzy about what it does. How important is that visibility and sort of amplifying it, I suppose, as an initiative?
It's really important, and it's one of the things that we're really keen to do using this cycle, the PISA 2025 framework as an example of that, because we want people to appreciate its value. I think some of us may be familiar with the headlines that come out, and obviously there's a declining trend in some regards in terms of our PISA score, but we really want to address that, but it doesn't always tell the full story.
Well, that's it. You kind of look at the headlines. You tend to kind of look for your country or where's Scotland in the kind of league table and go, well, that might not look good or that looks good. But that, like you say, it doesn't tell the full story.
Mm-hmm.
How can we get people to drill down into it a little bit more and actually understand there's more to it than just a league table?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we're really keen to do this year is tell that story. Just unlock some of the nuance and the interesting aspects of PISA to help people understand the different ways that it's being used. So that's a journey for us. But I think particularly we've got PISA this year, where we've got the PIRLS survey, the International Survey for Literacy. We've got the TIM survey, the International Survey for Mathematics and Science coming as well, and even another PISA cycle.
You're going to have a lot of data. Just an avalanche of data.
So now's a really good chance to say to people, this is going to be part of of our education system. It's going to be featuring in the headlines. It's part of our educational story. So we're really trying to promote that engagement and help people understand this in the fuller picture.
Well, it just and I think as well it just takes the guesswork out of things. You've actually got raw physical data that can help shape curriculums, empower decision makers, and and improve the education system fundamentally.
Yeah, but I think it's been a really enjoyable journey these last few months for our team in Education Scotland, because there's because of this, I suppose, the anonymity of the PISA survey. We want to protect the identities of the learners, and some anonymous, for instance, in schools involved. So in some ways, the government agencies don't necessarily see what happens at school level, and we don't get to see the questions necessarily. We don't get to see the marking scheme. So in some ways, there's with a mystery around PISA, and actually the more that we engage with our colleagues this year in the Scottish Government and the Analytical Services team, the more we find out about PISA. We've really enjoyed that and valued that. I think that's what we're trying to share through this support package and the this year, is let people know about it. Particularly this year as well, for sciences, the focus on sciences. As I say, we're updating our maths curriculum, we're updating our health and wellbeing, our English, our science curriculum, but other curriculum areas as well. It's perfect timing for us, because the PISA 2025 framework is underpinned by a lot of thinking and a lot of research about what a future-orientated sciences curriculum looks like. And so PISA holds up a mirror, and I think from the results and findings from this year, we'll get to see what extent our science curriculum in Scotland reflects that future-orientated sciences curriculum. Now, our sciences curriculum in Scotland was implemented and launched 15 years ago.
A lot's happened in 15 years.
A lot's happened in 15 years. But, actively just now, we are engaging with a lot of teachers and a lot of stakeholders around Scotland to design this new curriculum. And so the thinking, the research underpins PISA, and all the work we're doing just now is actually directly informing this new iteration of the sciences curriculum.
Fantastic. Well, listen, you've got some exciting times ahead, and it's been really interesting finding out about it. So thank you for having me. Thank you for chatting. I'm going to meet a couple of teachers now who are going to be helping the learners to prepare for the upcoming PISA assessment. Martin, Helen, thank you very much for taking the time out to talk to me. So maybe you could just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your involvement with PISA.
My name's Helen Scally. I'm a principal teacher of chemistry, and I've also started a new role as an Education Scotland associate. And I'm working with Martin.
Okay. What does an education associate mean?
It is a role where teachers from across Scotland have been invited to work with Education Scotland on particular projects.
Okay.
So one of those projects is the PISA Assessment 2025.
Great, thank you. And Martin?
I'm a former principal teacher of sciences, and I'm also an Education Scotland associate, and focused again on the PISA 2025 assessments.
Well, let's jump in. What do you think of PISA?
I think it's a really exciting body of work, a piece of research, and it's something that teachers don't always know the depths of, and just how valuable the data is.
Yeah.
So it's really important for us in our team as Education Scotland Associates that we are increasing the awareness of PISA data and also the value of the data for Scotland. So as part of that, what we're actually involved in is creating like a suite of resources for teachers and other people within the education sector. So we've started off with some preparing some videos. The first
Like
one,
this one.
like this one. Thanks for helping out with
Well,
that,
it's my
by the
pleasure.
way.
It's my pleasure.
So another one was for learners, parents, and guardians. We had then a second video which was for kind of the people within schools who are sort of involved in organising the PISA assessments themselves. So that's usually a deputy head teacher, there'll be the ICT coordinator, and maybe other science technicians or IT technicians within the school. And then the third video is this one here, and this is for teachers, senior leaders, and also for kind of government or rather authority officials.
Oh no, I suddenly feel very self-conscious.
But there is more. We're also organising for online support webinars,
Great.
which will be networking sessions for teachers
Yeah.
and senior managers. That'll allow them to both raise questions, especially for their first-time schools doing the PISA assessments, and just to generally get the experience that the Scottish Government are able to pass on.
I think I didn't quite realise about the sort of visibility of it. I perhaps assumed everyone knew about PISA and it was common knowledge, but there does seem to be a bit of an issue in terms of its visibility.
It is, especially for learners, because learners haven't had a chance to answer the style of questions that
They're
PISA is
very
going to be
different.
asking. And so we're really going to encourage learners and schools to get involved with the exemplar online questions,
Yeah.
so that it takes down the temperature and makes them feel less nervous about the whole process.
What do you, I mean, as we both work in schools, I'm interested in what you think the kind of value of it is in terms of the data itself, but actually the participation of it. Do you think it's a good thing? Are you impressed with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, for young people, as Martin said, they've not really experienced the type of questions maybe that they're going to see in the PISA assessment. So they do need to get some practice on those types of questions. But what they're going to get is also an ability to have a voice in Scottish education and have their voice heard, which is so important for them in moving forward with the curriculum improvement cycle as well. But I think what we're really keen to do is just to ensure that everyone is aware of the PISA assessments and that they value that data that it generates.
Yeah.
I think it's just that, if we can get young people to understand the importance of the data from this survey, because this is based on the post-assessment survey, and if they realise that if they capture their experience in Scottish education and understand how that data could then be used to influence future education in Scotland, I think they'll feel they've got a real part in the process.
Seems to benefit everyone, doesn't it? That you've got the students. I mean, reading the questions, I can see the benefit of answering questions like that. Makes you think a bit differently to the kind of standard kind of questions you might answer at school.
And that's why it's so important that I think anybody who's undertaking that assessment has a chance to try some of the exemplar questions. They are a different style to certainly SQA questions or BGE science or literacy numeracy questions. So it's important to do that. And once they've been through a few, then I think they'll feel a lot more relaxed about going in to do the assessment process.
Good for learners, good for teachers, good for policymakers.
Yeah.
I think.
Should be.
And we really want the young people to be confident going into these assessments, and we want them to be motivated to do their best. The survey is anonymous, so it kind of takes some of the pressure off the young people a little bit. So hopefully they can go in, do their best, and just get the most out of the experience as well, because like we said, it's going to give them some opportunities to try different types of questions, apply their learning, do some problem solving. The assessments are quite interactive, so they're different to what they've seen before, but hopefully it should be an enjoyable experience for them to some point.
The questions aren't like questions you normally see in school. So I'm interested in how you prepare for them, because it's not like a memory exercise. It's how does one prepare for these questions?
Yeah, it's really, it is really interesting. It's quite different to what they've
Yeah.
seen before. So really looking at the current Scottish curriculum, we want to really focus on the topical science organiser, which is key to this type of assessment, because the topical science enables teachers to support learners to develop their scientific literacy skills.
What do you mean by topical? So give us an example.
So they might be looking at kind of controversies around mobile phone masts,
Yeah.
or flat earthers, or vaccine hesitancy,
Yeah.
things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So just, or even, just anything that's coming up in the news, just anything that really sparks their interest as well from the news and from everyday life. But we want them to be able to take that information, and they've got to kind of critically analyse it, understand what the sources are, where it's come from, be aware that things could be misinformation or disinformation, and be able to evaluate what the information is that they have in front of them. So we want them to be scientifically literate, but also to be kind of able to form and develop their own opinions on these issues.
See, I think this is really important. It's as important as knowledge is that we get from school. Understanding what science is and how science works and what are the values of science is pretty fundamental.
Yes.
Okay, so in terms of PISA visibility, we've got a series of videos. What else do we have?
Well, they've also got a series of online support webinars, which are for senior leaders and teachers in schools, to give them a chance to ask questions about the process, and especially useful for those schools who have not taken part in PISA before.
Yeah. So people who want to find out more about PISA, where can they go to get all the information?
All these support materials can be found on the Education Scotland website and under the National Improvement Hub, but there'll also be a QR code at the end of this video, and also a link to where you can find all the resources.
Great, fantastic. Thank you both so much. I've had such a fascinating day today. I came here this morning not knowing anything about PISA, and I have learned so much, and lots of real positive things to take away. The fact that Scotland is above average in its reading, for example, or the fact that it really takes into account the importance of science in society, out of the classroom and in the real world. And I think perhaps more than anything, the fact that PISA really acts as a huge mirror for the education system as a whole, and can measure itself against the rest of the world and take the best bits from here and the best bits from there and apply it to its own education system. But really actually meeting some of the young learners in there and remembering that every single data point that we talk about refers to a young person's life, to their dreams, to their aspirations, and that is the real value of PISA.